welcome to Preparing for Work, session 6. We have come to the end of our Preparing to Work sessions. So what have we covered? We've looked at how to do effective job searching, CV and cover letters, preparing for an interview part 1, preparing for an interview part 2. Last week we looked at your sort of disability rights, what reasonable adjustment means in the law in general. And this week, in our final session, we're going to be looking at some work do's and don'ts, what your social media management is, and we'll look at LinkedIn profiles. So without further ado, today's session, we're going to look at social media. You have a job, woohoo! But now what? We're going to have a little quick break, and then we're just going to go over, do a really brief summary of what we've done the past 6 weeks, just to bring it all together. So, hello, I'm Daryl. I will be your host for this evening. Before we start, we're going to sort of just have a little think about what you want out of today's session, as it's like the last one. Have a little think over what you've learned over the last 6 weeks, what you found useful, what you haven't, and what your do's and don'ts on social media. So, without further ado, so we're going to have a quick look at what we mean by social media and sort of managing your profiles. This isn't just for when you're in a job. Actually, you really need to be thinking about your social media profile in general when you're applying for jobs, during your job hunt, because obviously companies will Google you the minute you apply for a job. So without further ado, let's look at some good social media do's. So really important to create an online presence. So for example, you should absolutely, as we sort of mentioned way back in like week 1, set up a LinkedIn account, update it with like whether it's your voluntary experience, your Saturday job, whatever it is, start building that up and keep it up to date. Whenever you start a new job, update it with anything you're doing in your new current job that might be really interesting. Do be consistent. For example, like I just said, does your LinkedIn match your CV? Make sure that it's always up to date and you've got everything that you want in there, because when people search, like job recruiters, they might be searching LinkedIn, and if they come across your profile, if it's not up to date, they might think that you've not got any experience they need when you do. So again, just be sure you're really consistent, make sure everything matches up. If you're not sure what your presence is online, do a little Google search for your name and see what's out there. This is also a good way to find out if there's anything you need to get rid of, or if there's anything you want to have on there that's not. But it's also a really good insight, because when you go look, like I said, when you apply for a job, if you can Google and find something about you, I can tell you now, your future boss will be able to Google it and find out something about you. Network. So we're going to talk a bit more about networking in a bit, but it is really, important that, when you start looking for a job, etc., start networking, especially if you're thinking about your career, or if there's or even if there's an internship you want, or if there's some work experience, or if there's something you want to work towards, or even like volunteering or a great cause. Start networking, try to get in and see how it is you can get that, that dream, whether it's internship or work experience or job. Super important. I think I've touched on this briefly before, but it's really, really important that you have a professional picture on your LinkedIn. I have seen people who have pictured them, in sunglasses on nights out, etc., etc., etc. Try to keep your picture as professional as possible. Don't have a selfie. Don't have anything, too wild. Again, you want to quite simple, quite clear. Think professional. Okay, so let's look at some big don'ts. Don't post controversial content that could get you fired. So like I said, this isn't just like, it's really good. Like I said, to obviously don't post anything too crazy before, but especially once you have a job, don't post anything that if you'd be embarrassed that your mum would read it, and you probably don't want your boss to read it. This is easily something someone could fall into, and you might think it's really obvious, but you'll be surprised at how many horror stories you can see of, you know, X woman has been fired because of controversial Facebook status. So just be very, very careful of what you're posting. Even if you think, oh, well, I've got all my privacy settings on Facebook and no one's going to, you know, my boss will never see it. You never know who else you're friends with, or if someone could screenshot it and send it to your boss. That is possible. So be really, really careful, because you never know. Like, nothing is, you know, safe on the internet. There isn't any true sort of privacy there, really. So if you post it, just be aware that it could get back to them. So again, always err on the side of caution. Don't post anything that's going to get you into trouble. And again, I know I just mentioned this, but don't forget your Facebook privacy settings. Do make sure they are locked down. Like I said, it's not a guarantee that, you know, someone won't be able to screenshot something and send it to someone, or, you know, like that. But also, you know, just make sure your privacy settings are, you know, very clamped down, very secure, just so your boss can't Google or just go and read every single Facebook status you've ever made. Same goes with Twitter, or if you've got a Tumblr or anything like that. So we touched briefly on networking, and we are going to go into that a bit later on, but don't feel like on LinkedIn that you have to connect with everyone. If someone sends you a request, don't think, oh, well, I've got to automatically accept it. You know, be very selective of who you want to follow, who you want to connect with. Make sure it's, you know, in the industry or an area that you're interested in, and that, you know, actually it's got some point, some use to it. Don't spend time online on your boss's dime. Okay, so I'm going to touch on this a bit briefly later, but you'll be surprised the number of people who will sit there on Facebook, on social media, while they're at work. Just don't do it. Don't even log in. Don't be tempted. You know, if you're feeling a bit bored at work, don't log on to Facebook or Twitter, etc. There's always something else you can do, and if you're not sure, ask your boss, ask like the line manager, what else can I do? And that goes for even if you're in retail and you think, you know, you're on a shop, say you're working in Clark's and you're bored, don't be tempted to get your phone out and, you know, check Facebook. Your boss is not gonna like that. It's, you know, unfortunately it's not okay, so don't do it. Okay, so I'm going to talk brief about networking. This might be something you know, something you're not too sure with. But I'm just going to cover a few networking basics, just so you know what to do in the future. So, start networking before you need to. What this means is always just continue building your network, because you never know when you might need to start looking for a new job, or if you want to start, or a next opportunity might arise. So always sort of start putting out feelers. If there's something like, if there's some particular voluntary work you're interested in, or maybe an internship in a particular industry, maybe start connecting with people, inquiring before you need to, because it's always good to have a wide basis, always ready, just in case that anything pops up in your network that actually you think, actually that's something I really want to sort of get down with and start doing. Okay, have a plan. Okay, so before you start attending any sort of networking in the future, make sure that you're clear on what your talents are, what your strengths are, what your skill sets are, and especially what other strengths and talents other people have. So you're not just networking, you know, willy-nilly without a plan. Sort of know what sort of people you want to talk to, what you want to get from them. Also know what your values are, and you can sort of sell yourself a little bit. So don't just in a frenzy connect with everyone in a particular industry, because that's something you want to do later on. Think about it logically, look at where people are, and sort of just have a little plan formulated on how what you can get out of connecting with someone. Never dismiss anyone as unimportant. Make it your mission to discover the value in each person you talk to. Ask questions, listen with interest. Don't make the mistake of discounting people due to their titles. You know, someone might say they're just like an administrator, for example, or something you might not think is, you know, very high up, but they probably might have valuable connections and knowledge you can learn about. So, you know, don't dismiss them. Always remember that everyone has something to offer. Okay, connect the dots. Once you begin listening to people, you learn what they can bring to the table, and you can start realizing that how one person in a room can connect to another. So make a point to connect to people you feel have something of genuine value, and go out of your way, sort of make sure that you're not just connecting with people randomly. Sometimes you can see people that bring everyone else together. So listen out for those sorts of people when it comes to networking, because you'll be amazed at how many there are. Okay, so that's just the basics on how to network, and sort of when it comes to putting out feelers of when you want to start getting connections with people in the workplace. So more importantly, you now have a job. Woohoo! Congratulations, you've done it. You've got the job. We've done everything. We've gone for our interview prep. We've gone through everything. We've done our job application, our CV. You've done the job. So here are some handy hints of what to do now once you have that job. Mentioned this a little bit earlier, but just to really hammer it home, don't sit on Facebook, WhatsApp, or anything that's not work related at work. You will be amazed at how many people do this. Even people, well into their, late 20s, early 30s, you can see people there sitting there on WhatsApp, and people will judge you for it. I once knew a woman who I worked with who would log onto WhatsApp on her desktop and sit there messaging her friends the majority of the day. Don't do it. Don't be tempted. You're always going to get caught out. So another little tip, when you start, you've got your first job, woohoo, always check your pay slip, make sure that you've been paid correctly. Don't feel ashamed or embarrassed if you want to question or double check anything, because sometimes these things do get messed up, or they go wrong, or things go through as they shouldn't. So always double check your pay slip. It's very easily done to look at your bank account and go, oh look, woohoo, the money's gone through, but always just double check that you are being paid correctly and everything's as it should be. And that goes with your tax code. They can be really daunting, but if you're not sure, just have a little Google, make sure that you're being taxed the right amount, and that's all sorted. So this is, again, you might have heard some about this, but there are workplace pensions that you're automatically enrolled in depending on what size of the company you're in. Always do your research on your workplace pension. Do you want to be contributing, paying into it? Or, if you do, make sure you know the ins and outs, because that can automatically happen. And again, that will come up on your payslip. So this is just general advice. Double check what is going on. Again, you've worked hard for your money. Make sure you know where it is. So this is just when you join somewhere, they will onboard you or welcome you to the company. There'll be lots of information out there that you should have a meeting, whether it's with your manager or HR. So when you first start, to help you really settle into a new job, try and seek out any onboarding information there is, whether it's looking on the company's intranet or talking with other people about the company, and if there is any. Some companies have books on what their values are, what their mission is. Find it all, read it. It's a really good way, especially in your first week or so, when you might be just settling in. You might not be as busy as you will be in the following weeks. So that then is a really good time to sort of seek out that information and have a read through of it, because trust me, the minute you start getting busy, you'll never have time to read that sort of stuff. So this is just a general helpful tip. Track everything you do in your job and update your CV regularly. It makes it so much easier when you start job hunting again, because again, you're not going to stay in one job forever. So this is a really useful key tip. I do this all the time. Every time I start a new job, I just keep little notes of what I've done. For example, if it's a new project or responsibilities I've not done before, anything like that, I just note it down, because you'll be amazed if you've been in a job 3 years and then you have to sort of sit and think about, oh, what have I learned over those 3 years? When you're trying to update your CV, it can be really, really hard, and you can easily miss some really important stuff. You'll be amazed at just how much you can do. So we're now going to have a quick look what we've done these past 6 weeks. Thank you for coming along and listening to all this. I hope you've all found it really, really useful. And again, if you have any questions or anything, please email Holly or Baha, and I'm sure they'll get right back to you. So, what have we done these past 6 weeks? Feels like an age ago. So, back at the beginning, we looked at how to do effective job searching. So, in week 1, we looked at where to apply for jobs, different job sites, how, volunteering, and also applying for apprenticeships. And what we also did in week 1 that was really important, if you want to go back and look at it, is sort of assessing what your values are, what you sort of want out of a job, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how you can move towards your strengths and move away from your weaknesses, and sort of look at what you want out of your career and where you want to go. I really recommend this for anyone who, when they're starting to look for a job, to really sit down and take that time to think about what they want and make sure that actually they're going after the right job for them. Next up, we looked at our CV and cover letter. Now, I hope lots of you have gone and had your CV looked at by the experts that Holly and Baha set up. But here we looked at some CV and cover letter do's and don'ts, how to space your CV, what information is important, what is less important, and everything, like I said, do's and don'ts and the basics for CVs and cover letters. In the third week, we started. We looked at preparing for interviews, like interview questions and everything around interviews in 2 parts. The first week, we looked at particular interview questions and how to answer them. If you want to go back to preparing for the interview part 1 and look at sort of all the different questions that you might be asked, look at the sort of answers you can give. Again, they're not to be learnt off by heart. They're just a guide. You can adapt them to your own experience. And we also looked at how to answer these questions using the STAR method. And that's, again, really, really useful. So go back and check that out. And then in week 2, we looked at more around the interview itself rather than just the questions, looking at how to prepare yourself for an interview, looking at your body language and other do's and don'ts around interviewing. That is really, really important. And then last week, we started looking at sort of when you're in work, so particular sort of disability rights, what reasonable adjustment is, and the law in general. And again, this was very much a legal definition of what a disability is and actually what you're entitled to under that law and that definition. So really important stuff. We also looked at last week around some mental health and sort of how to cope with mental health in the workplace really briefly, and sort of some ways to, if you're having a tough time, what you can do and where you can actually go to find some help. So again, if you want to look at that a bit more, go look at week 5. And this week, we've just looked at some basic do's and don'ts in the workplace, how to manage your social media presence, and yeah, that's about it. So it has been an absolute pleasure. Again, if you've got any other questions, please get in touch with Baha or Holly. I'm sure they'll be able to answer all your questions. And until next time, it's been a pleasure. Bye.